What is up, guys? MSD here, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I have yet another Abyss solo for everyone watching at home. It is my third Luke Cage solo, by far my cleanest one yet. I have two prior solos, my first one when I was still exploring the Abyss, and a secondary one when I decided to go back in for some testing. Nice little evade there from Luke Cage, just starting off little feisty, but nevertheless, this is my third Abyss Luke Cage solo. I really enjoy this fight. It can go wrong in a lot of different ways, but if you control your spacing to pretty much perfection, and you have a good grasp of the distance She-Hulk's attacks will take you, and how far that will push Luke Cage either to the corner or to the middle of the map, you know, knowing the dash back distance, and whether or not you're able to sidestep Luke Cage. Spoiler alert, you are. If you do a shallow dex, you can sidestep him, and you'll see that eventually here for a few times I sidestep him. But Luke Cage is arguably the hardest fight to solo in Abyss with just, one single character. She-Hulk is, in my opinion, the best option for Luke Cage in terms of speed. Now, Stealth Spidey can solo this fight with relative ease. It's just a very long, arduous journey to get him from 100 to 0. I believe it's nearly 2,000 hits, whereas She-Hulk can get the fight soloed anywhere from 400 to 500 hits, so that 75% hit margin, that difference from She-Hulk to Stealth Spidey, is pretty large. The gap is very vast. Spider-Gwen can also solo this fight. Suida has some sick gameplay with his new rank 3 Spider-Gwen. There's the sidestep that I was talking about. And again, that fight is still over 1,000 hits with Spider-Gwen, I believe, or if not, very close to it. But She-Hulk does it in the fastest amount of time, or the least amount of time, should I phrase it, and the most efficient amount of damage output per second. It just ramps up infinitely. There is no cap to her furies, so you could essentially fight any champion with the matchup allowing you, the stipulations being set up right, where you're not going to lose your furies, and you could ramp up to infinite damage numbers. She's the only character in the game, I believe, that has that sort of mechanic where her fury has no limit. I think she's the only one, because I know Howard the Duck's stack is 99. I know Human Torch's Nova Flames aren't infinite. They can stack to 124, 125, I think is the max. But She-Hulk is the only character that can theoretically reach damage numbers of the infinite, variety. So that's just a little cool factoid. It's never gonna be possible, but she won't suffer from Proxima Midnight Syndrome, where her damage is achievable, but it's impractical for content because of damage caps. Eventually, She-Hulk would get to a point with her damage ramp up where she would be hitting that damage cap every single hit, so the damage cap would be irrelevant. So she's kind of immune to the Proxima Midnight Syndrome and other characters like that have damage limitations but can never reach them because either they deal too much damage or damage caps prevent them. So she suffers from it a little bit, because if there was no damage cap, she would be hitting much harder than 85k, but she doesn't really get affected by it like other champions do, because she will eventually just be hitting the damage cap every single time, like I said. So there is no real reason why you can't use She-Hulk for this long-term content if you know how to use her properly. That's the only limiting factor, is knowing how to properly use her with spacing and heavy countering. Not every matchup will be the same. Some matchups will require less heavy attacks, some matchups will require not using light attacks like I did just there to make sure my spacing was within the hitbox. So it's all matchup dependent, like the champion in here, that's a very easy, almost stupidly easy solo with She-Hulk. Just because of, the spacing, it's almost natural that the spacing is almost naturally given to you, should I say, where the champion just pushes himself closer and closer to you, where you most of the time don't need to use light attacks, but you still need to use them sometimes to make sure the distance is completely closed. But even if you don't use light sometimes against the champion, you'll still land the secondary hit. Just like for Luke Cage, if you get the dash back right on the special one, you don't have to use lights, and your first hit of the heavy won't connect, but your second hit will. So it's just about practice, repetition. This is an extremely difficult fight to solo, especially with, you know, a champion with such a high skill cap. There's so many things to manage in this fight. Your fury duration, the spacing, his power gain, the unstoppable, keeping up the slow. There's just so many things to juggle in this fight, and it's very difficult, as I said, to solo it without an extensive amount of practice and prior knowledge of using She-Hulk or any champion to be able to solo this fight. You know, any champion that has the ability to solo this fight, it's an extremely difficult task. But with She-Hulk especially, there's just so many more things you have to worry about when, like, a champion such as Stealth Spidey or Spider-Gwen, it's really just maintaining the slow and not getting hit. So while that would be easier, the She-Hulk solo, it's more of a test of your skill, or no, it's definitely more of a test of your skill than those other fights. Not trying to downplay any solos with She-Hulk, or with Stealth Spidey, or Spider-Gwen, or even Professor X, because those are all incredibly impressive, but I'm just mentioning the fact that She-Hulk has a lot more variables, you know, a lot more things that you have to take into consideration if you are using her for this fight in the attempt of a solo. Now, if you're not going for a solo, there's a lot less you have to worry about, because, you know, you're going to be able to parry, and you have a lot more time to kind of think out your moves. When you're going for a solo, you know, on the other hand, you just have to work like a well-oiled machine. You really can't stutter. You just can't stop, essentially. It's all fluid motion. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing every single time. You know, you can't really miss a beat, because if you do, it's pretty much game over. There are very, very rare instances where he won't punish you, but if you do miss a beat with She-Hulk, it will end your night, and the solo will not be able to be captured. So there we go, guys. This is my third Luke Cage solo in the Abyss of Legends, my cleanest one so far. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Like and subscribe. Peace.